Well, I see you having fun already, brother. What on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. I look
Yeah.
forward to hanging with you. I'm Sarita. I'm the better part of the twindom right now, and that's my brother Xadian for another. How many more days we got that we twins?
Another month, right? Another
Another
29 days or something
another
like that now.
29 days. I'm the better part of the twindom. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, we use this time for as our therapeutic safe space in honor of our grandmother Rose, who gave us so many wonderful lessons and nuggets. And we have been using our time to come together to share and learn how to be better humans. And so y'all get
Mhm.
to follow us along on this human journey. In this space, we talk about anything that comes to our mind. And today we're going to be talking about anatomy of an apology. But before we get there, I want to really hang out with you, brother, and see what's going on this week because you was already turned up when the camera started. So how you doing?
Everything's going great. It's really, you know what? I heard this story one time. It was in a book I read. It was about a dude, and he was really trying to court a lady, and he was really confused about her because he was trying to figure out something that she liked because he really wanted to please her and make her happy, right? And
Right.
you know how men want they had this kind of white knight desire, so he's doing all this stuff for her, and he's wanting to get uh that white knight treatment, like, and she's not doing it. So he's getting frustrated because he's saying, damn, what's wrong with this woman? She's high maintenance and everything, right? So then they start talking. And so she's telling him, look, you don't make me feel loved or whatnot. So he told her, tell me some things I could do to make you feel loved. So she says, when you come home every day, come look for me and give me a kiss or whatever.
Mhm.
And he said he felt like a clown, and when he did it, right, for the first few times. But then he started uh, looking forward to it. He said when he started coming home, he said, he really did feel in his heart like, I love her, where she's at. So I'm saying all that to say that I'm starting to look forward to these times
Oh,
to get up with you.
because I fulfill so many people, but knowing I fulfill you is just excellent, and you do the
Yeah.
same for me. I agree. The 2 o'clock on Thursdays are my favorite time. Our topics are diverse today, so or different than what we've generally touched on. But it's built off of those real life experiences. And if those of you who are new to our Rose Garden, what we do is we pull from our life and we talk about what's happening in our life, and then we try to work through. My brother has always been somebody I've consulted who made me better, and I think I make him better. So today we're going to really jump into it quick, fast, in a hurry and talk about the anatomy of apology because boy, was an apology tour happening around me this week. So I don't know if that's a good thing or if I have created an environment where harm has been done and people felt like they needed to apologize, but there was some important lessons in these apologies that one I want to grow from because I recognize that I had emotional reactions in all of these harmful moments. But then
Mm.
two, their apologies were crap. They were just
Not really apologies, you know
not
what I mean?
apologies.
Yeah.
And I have listened to so many people talk about their harm experience, and I think right now the internet is full of all these people who are laying out their wounds,
Mm.
but they're not really making space for repair. And I think one thing that's been unique about our relationship, you and I, is that we have talked about repair, we have practiced repair, and I think we're really good at repair. I think the problem is now that I'm looking around, I'm older now. I'm in that middle age range now where I can really hover around and see like where did I get these experiences from? Where were they cultivated? How are they cultivated? Do
Mhm.
I practice what I expect and do I receive what I expect? So none of that happened this week. So I want to dive into um, and and I want to get your insights on it. So the very very first situation happened with a very close family member,
Mhm.
um, and in it I didn't even know we were in an argument, which was really a frustrating part of this human experience for me, because people can really turn sensitive and mad quickly. And so one of my strategies here is like, when you're arguing with somebody or you mad at somebody, you really should let them know harm has been done, or you take
Hmm.
offense to what happened. So that didn't happen. And so an offense was done. And then all of a sudden, in the discussion about the offense, I have to hear about all the times back in 1902, when, this person did this for me and this person did that for me. And so I had to be, and they were coming to collect their chits on all of those things that they had done for me and were upset with me about not doing.
Mm.
So that was the first kind of harmed experience, because what I felt harmed by was the fact that I'm being measured by who I am in the past,
Mhm.
um, and
Mhm.
that measurement isn't fair, because I don't even know that like I don't even
Mhm.
know who I was in the past. And then I really worked on, um, or at least just from a developmental course, some of those things I don't even remember. I don't know
Mhm.
what went into them, but at this level, I don't have to be paying back for something that I've already done.
No, I
So
totally agree with you on that.
so
All of
that was
the
the
above.
first offense. That was the first
Mhm.
thing. What you think about that? Like, I'm always, got to pay back.
Well, first of all, you hit on a couple of key points, right? Which is interesting to me because I think like life imitates itself in many different ways, right? But the first thing was the communication, where you said you didn't even know you guys were in an argument at first, right? And then, you know, and then this the part of that is the communication, I guess, because you said something about they wanted to dump, all this past stuff on you, and then keep this image of you in a past time, and bring it to this present tense. So I was thinking, you know, computers, they imitate how humans communicate, right? Because
Mm,
humans created them, right? So the creator's
mhm,
always in its creation, right?
mhm,
So it patterns the way humans communicate, except it does it perfectly, right? Because anything that you do, um, anything that you create that's like a computer program or digitally, it does exactly precisely what you program it to do, right? So there's this thing in communication called a three-way handshake, right? Which the thing is, it identifies the roles that you're having, right? So let's just say it's just a cell phone, like phone to phone.
mhm,
So if I'm calling you, you're the receiving party, right? So you're the receiver and I'm the transmitter, right? So I'm ringing to you. You gonna pick it up, you know.
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
gonna introduce myself. I'm gonna ask you, hey, is this a good time to talk? You gonna tell me yes or no, whatnot, all this.
mhm, mhm.
So I think like the thing about communication that people do wrong, that people make a lot of errors, and including myself, because I was one of these people that did this too, is that they want to inside of a single issue, right? Because that conversation you probably started with a single point,
Single
right?
issue,
Yeah,
right?
single issue. So why we bring it up a million of other things inside of a single issue? Because the human mind can't process all that. We only talking about one thing, and you can't even respond to you know a
Right.
million different things that happened in the past and all this stuff. So let's just focus on the thing at hand, the one
At
thing
one
at
time.
hand,
Right,
right,
right.
right, at one
And
time.
communication science, it follows that logic. A lot of that information, there's communication science talk about these feedback loops, and we can get on these negative and positive feedback loops through this kind of an inner exchange. But it's really important for us to be on the same loop.
Right.
And so I think when in this particular harm situation, and why it caused me harm was because I was so unclear that there was uh, an offense, and
Right, right.
I still have left. I have gone away from that moment, recognizing that I'm not clear about what the offense was, and I could be the offender, right? I'm okay because I get it, right? Like in every story, you got to have a victim and a villain, and I think as somebody who is trying to be very actualized and accepting of their role in things, I'll be the villain, right? I can take that on most of the time, but dang, I deserve at least to know that this
Well,
is gonna
but
happen,
you
you
know
know?
what's funny is like sometimes you are placed into that role of being a villain unwillingly, right? You know
Right.
how we're supposed to be consensual adults to things. You get placed into that unwillingly. And I'll give you a perfect example of it is when people ask you for favors, right?
Oh,
Based off a relationship with you. So let's just say,
right.
we got a close relationship and you want to ask me for anything. It don't matter what it is. It could be, but let's just say the typical thing people want to ask for is financial resources. So
Money.
somebody want to come to you and ask you for a
Money.
financial favor, right?
Right.
you know, but this is my whole thing. Is it a request or is it a demand? Because a request can be denied, right?
Yeah.
And we should
One
not
would
have
assume.
we should not have no hard feelings on that. We should be like, "Hey, can you do this?" No. Yes, yes or no. No, I don't. No, I can't do it. It don't matter for the reason why. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Yeah. Can you do it? No. Okay, cool. Then we good. This shouldn't that shouldn't affect anything. But I
Right.
think like when people start bringing things up, it really is a revelation of what they truly feel. You know, it's kind of like ripping the veil off, and then that Wizard of Oz when he's behind there, he's got the smoke machine going, all this
Right.
stuff.
Really
Yeah,
tight.
it's going back behind the door, opening and pulling off the sheet, and
Right.
and then you seeing like, okay, that's how you really feel about me, though. You
Right.
know, you really
Right.
feel these ways about me, and it's good to know that.
Right.
It's
Right.
really good to know
And then
that.
it
Yeah.
becomes a demand when it's about money. Usually it's a demand. And you know what? I think you bring up a good point because in this same harm situation, there was a request.
Mm.
And the request could have been denied. We should have
Mhm.
mutually agreed on that. Um, and the request was denied, essentially. And then it turned into a demand, but it also turned into this veiled threat of harm. Like, I'm going to
Mhm.
do something to you or
Mhm.
else. Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I think my human spirit reacted in a way like, oh, is that what my relationship to you and with you means, that
Mhm.
the only way I'm in relationship, I have to do it your way.
Mhm.
And then the second thing was, like, I knew in that moment that person really didn't care about me. And when I started
Mhm.
this dialogue, I said it was a close family member. And the
Mhm.
problem about close family members is we imprint them in our mind, in our interactions, with a level of importance. And
Yeah.
so there's this level of importance, but it's also, there's this assumption, this natural assumption, that those very important people care about me enough to not want to cause me harm.
Totally agree with you.
And
Yep.
then when that is disproven in any kind of relational dynamic, even through siblings. I mean, you and I can, talk about it through siblings. Like, when if I set you up to get jumped, you know, as your as your sister, it would really be really challenging for you to build trust in me, and to kind of have us reciprocal interactions with me, because I am okay with your harm.
Yeah, 100%. And I
And
mean,
we
yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to step on that. Go ahead. What
No,
were you
no, no,
gonna
no,
say?
go ahead, I want to hear your thought.
No, I think that certain things, because people often have this mentality that they can do things and it'll be okay, right? Like, it's almost like I call it like the principle of, like the let's just call it the Christian principle, where they say you could kind of live a life of being a sinner up
Hmm.
until the point that you about to die, and you could just say, "Okay, God, forgive me," and
Rush
I
it all
accept it.
away.
Yeah, yeah, and rush it all away, right?
Right.
But I don't. And then people always, they do things and they want to say like, "Well, uh, I am not that one action," you know. But so I would say this, that you may not be that one action only, but yeah, you are every single action that you do. You know what I mean?
Right.
You are
Right.
every single action that you do, and it all matters. It all
Yes.
adds up. It all stacks on. It all matters.
Right.
So this thing about trust, like you're saying, you know, if somebody does something like that and they devastate you in a way that you realize, like, damn, you really are are willing to cause me harm and pain in a serious way, then
Right.
I don't think that trust could ever be repaired. That
Hmm.
part can't be because you know now, oh, that's in you
Right. That's
towards me. You know,
right.
that's a fact.
Right.
That's an actual facts towards me. So now I know that. You know, that's a piece of intelligence that I know that I maneuver around, but
Mhm.
I can't never really look at it like, well, I can fully trust now because I know
Right.
that's a part of you, and I'm wondering when that part of you is gonna come back up.
Right.
Like what factors, what set of circumstances
Are going to trigger
will
that.
yeah will make that thing surface again, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So these things is important, but then also like the the other aspect of it, like I said, people oftentimes come to you with these veiled requests that are truthfully demands, right?
Hmm.
There is no no in this. There's no processing of you thinking about it or what impacts these may have on you or whatever.
But
Because
that's
even
the
if
same as getting robbed.
right,
You take
right,
you take you got choice. You just
right.
basically I'm gonna take this from you. So
Yeah, you
then
just went in my pocket, go
right.
take it. And you don't know
So
what that does to me. Like
right,
what if that is payroll? What if
right,
that is rent? What if that
right,
is a car note? You don't know what that's doing to me, but
right.
it
So it's
doesn't matter.
no, I'd rather this is what I like about people who are just so right.
Mhm.
When I started my career off, when I was training before I was licensed, actually, I trained in the juvenile detention center, and I had a couple of favorites. Not that I had favorites, but I
I
had
know what
people
you
that
mean.
I learned a lot from,
Mhm.
and there was this young man there who you know in our time together, I did their intakes, and so you ask all these questions about what brought them there, things they thought they would do differently, their history. And so one of the questions really is like, okay, tell me what brought you here, what's your story, and then is there anything that you would do differently, and then you got to scale that.
Mm.
And this one young man said, no, 100 times I'm doing the same exact thing. And so and when you live back into the individual's history, he had been there before, right? And so I said, well, it's not very effective because what you're doing keeps landing you
Same
back
place,
here,
huh?
right?
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
but he said it's taking y'all longer. So each time,
He said it's taking longer to get there.
longer. I've been here since this time, so there was this rationale, and
I hear that.
his black and white centering was so
Mhm.
meaningful for me, and it was how he operated the whole time he was there. So if you were from West, he did not like you because he was from the East. It was no in between. It was no good West Side dudes. It was just if you had if you had any kind of sexual thing charge or whatever, he did not like you. He didn't eat pork. It was not an exception. He just lived in this black and white kind of scenario where I always appreciated interacting with him because you knew where you stood. Now flip that to some other them dudes. It's like they be telling you, you perfect, and they got all the right words, and then the next day, they got some new demerit or something on their thing. You like, well, I thought you said you was gonna do that. These people just operated without no principle, and so it was
Yeah,
much
that's what it
harder.
is.
Yeah,
The
it was
code,
much
the
harder.
codes, the
The
codes and
code
the
switch.
principle. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
And
with you.
so that one dude, I always understood where that dude stood. And I knew I had a choice in my interactions.
Mhm.
Those other people, you don't necessarily have a choice in your interactions because there's no real principle. It's this fluid kind of exchange. And so they're the most dangerous. But then it really becomes very dangerous when those people are not people you get to choose. So, like, you don't get to choose your family. So, if your mother is like that, or your father is like that, or your sister is like that, or your brother is like that, you really become um, it's almost like you create these defenses
Yeah,
that
you
you're
get
not even
guarded.
aware of. But now in childhood, we couldn't, we probably resisted those defenses. I'm sure people would probably find people who were in those kind of instances with kind of parents like that. They'd say, oh, those kids are mouthy and they were rejecting it. But what they're being mouthy about is stuff that they know they can't necessarily always process what was wrong or how it was wrong, but they
Yeah.
know that the exchange and the relational dynamic was wrong. But
Mhm.
as an adult, I'm able now to say, like, One, I didn't even know I was in a fight with you. Two, I know we was about to rob each other. Three,
Right.
three, I was supposed to be guilty about stuff that I did, and we've already moved past. And so, that got me to thinking about what is the anatomy of a good apology, and
Mm,
how can I train all the people in my life that I'm okay with harm. Harm's going to happen. We are human. I'm not expecting us to have perfect interactions. I'm expecting us to understand that sometimes there might be an offense, right? I might step on your toes and I might need to say, I stepped on your toes and I know that created harm to you. And here's how I'm going to replace that behavior. That's what an anatomy of an apology really is. It's acknowledging that
mhm,
harm was done in that instance. So in that instance I'm sharing with you, the harm that was done was a couple of things. One, there was no clear communication that there was something that was offensive to you, and I need to know what that offense is.
Well,
Then
when you say the acknowledgement part, I think that in order for a person to have that acknowledgement part, then that requires like some accountability on their side and also empathy, right?
mhm,
For things that they have done. Like
mhm,
I recall this situation one time where I was at this basketball game and I was with my first real girlfriend in life. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And we was
mhm,
there at this basketball game together. And I was watching Allen Iverson play. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And he was
mhm.
and he was one of my favorite basketball players at the time and
Absolutely.
whatnot. Yeah, so at that game, there was a couple of people there. I ain't gonna say the entertainer that was there or whatever, but there was somebody that was sitting there that was like kind of close and row to us. And the dude, really, really popular dude at the time and all that stuff. And lots of people was like trying to come up to him, but he was really close in our vicinity. So I was telling her, she should go over there and say something because, again, I'm not like a starstruck dude.
Mhm,
Plus, it's a man, so I ain't trying to go approach no other man and all that stuff in this kind of a way. But she didn't really want to do it, right? And it created like some tension between us at the moment. And when that happened, I couldn't understand it because I was
mhm.
like, you know, what just happened?
Yeah,
Why was there some
yeah.
tension? But later on, I thought about it, on my own. Like I think like a day later or so, I just thought
Mhm,
about it, and I was like, I think that request I asked of her, the reason why she reacted like that was because she was afraid, like she got
mhm,
nervous and she didn't know how to. She was scared to go over there or whatever,
mhm,
and she
mhm,
probably thought I was gonna keep pressing it. And
mhm,
since she was afraid, that's why she responded like that. So on my own, I figured it out, but that took like some empathy. And then I went back to her and asked her. I said, "Hey, when that happened, is this how you were feeling?" And she was like, "Yeah, I was. I was feeling like that or whatnot." So I
yeah,
feel like for somebody to acknowledge it, they gotta kind of be first of all accountable for their own actions, and then
absolutely.
empathize. But what's the next part of the
So I
anatomy?
like that accountability and empathy. Empathy is a part of my anatomy of an apology too, but it doesn't start there. But I like in your kind of description of that because I think that's important too. But accountability, right? Like being able to be accountable for your actions and just that actions. But it's also bigger than that. It's recognizing where you created harm, and I
Hmm.
think that in order to do that, you have to one not be so ego fragile and not what I noticed in the BS apology that I
Hmm.
received was it was kind of like, I'm
Just,
sorry I did this, but
but I'm justified. It's
right, but I'm
justification. Like
justified.
I'm
And
justified in giving you this harm. You know what I mean?
correct.
Yeah,
Correct. I'm
yeah, yeah.
sorry I did this. It was no real acknowledgement of so the sorry was there,
Mhm,
so the sorry was there, but it was no real acknowledgement of what the harm that was done. And
yeah.
that then the next thing is talking about how you're going to avoid it later.
Mhm,
Because it's not just okay to keep punching me in my face,
mhm,
right? It's not just okay for that to happen and say, this is how I am. It's
mhm,
to then be aware that that creates harm and
mhm,
then to come up with your own script. That's why saying an apology is almost like a script. It's your way of talking yourself through what you're
Mhm.
going to do different. That linguistic exchange does something for your brain. It helps program your orders, your steps. Okay. So I need you to then talk yourself through what you're going to do differently. And then the empathy can be input, because I know that might have made you feel blah, 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 bad, mad, sad, whatever emotion you want to put in there. But acknowledge that that might have made you feel, or not might have, but if you can't stand on 10, you could say might. But I really like the people who can say, I know that hurt you. I
Yep,
know that
yep,
made
yep.
you feel like this.
Mhm.
And I don't ever want to be like that with you.
And
Uh,
back it up in action, right?
and back it up with action.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a great apology. Anything
Yeah, I
else,
totally agree.
if your apology has the word but, if your apology brings up all the reasons why you did it that didn't have nothing to do, like I had a really bad week, I'm one of the government workers that got laid off, and my boyfriend left me, and if your apology includes anything that did not happen with that scenario, then it's not authentic and it's not
100.
received authentically. And
Mhm.
it's okay then. I'm gonna now give the other side of that. Then it's okay for your undeveloped self, because I feel like I'm pretty developed. I'm really working hard, in my like middle-aged self. And now that we twins, I gotta make sure I'm showing you how to behave. I gotta be a good model for you, that I am doing good things and being better than like I was last year and years before. So I'm really working on myself. But let me tell you something. It's easy to reset to yourself, to who you are, to those weaker points of your own personality. It's very
Yeah, no
easy
doubt.
to reset.
Yeah.
And so then if those things don't exhibit, I'm giving everybody, including myself, that permission to be just that primitive person and let it go. Because it is a lot of work to always work on holding yourself back. It's a lot. I am in so many rooms and so many situations where, because of who I am and what I represent, and whether people want to believe race is the issue or not, but it is, like, I have to hold so much of Sarita back
Yeah,
that
I understand that.
it takes a lot of emotional work.
I get
I'm
you on
not
that.
doing that all the time.
No, I get you on that. I mean, I feel like this, like a part of letting go is expression, right? Because I think sometimes when people they want you to drop something, right? It's something that's bothering you or you feeling whatever, and they're thinking like, well, why are you keep holding on to it? Why are you keep bringing it up or whatnot? But I think this process of letting things go is giving expression to the different feelings that you're having, about
Right,
something, right?
right.
And when you are able to express it and it's all out, then you don't return back to it anymore. So I
Right.
do think that process of letting go, that actual flow is pouring out the expressions
Hmm.
that you deeply feel on these things.
Right.
But to your point, like I feel like these things they require a pair, they require a partner, to be engaged, involved in what you want. And we're blessed enough to in our lives to have both, good partners and bad partners, right? You know what I mean? Yeah, and these little social exercises or whatnot. So
Right.
I feel like, in a situation with a good partner, like everybody in terms of intention, both sides are oriented on the side of each other's best interest.
Right.
I'm looking out for my interest, but I want to look out for your interest too. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's kind of definitely feels really good when somebody gives you a full apology,
Right.
and something that's been, that happens without you having to do anything, to bring it about, that they
Right.
actually initiated that apology on their own.
Right.
But some people just want to just simply do the act of apologizing, but they're not really, like you said, they don't really care about the pain that it inflicted on you. It's just what they're giving out.
Right. Right.
And then and sometimes, in these actions of giving out, it actually is receiving. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's
Right.
like a person that really be taking all the time. You know how like
Mhm,
somebody always there's some people who always want to have the last word,
mhm,
and those people when they having the last word, seemingly giving that word is giving out, but really it's what they're receiving is the feeding of their own ego and pride, you know.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so they ain't really giving nothing. They just
Right,
taking, you know,
right.
inside the situation. And I feel like these people who come with empty apologies, they just really taking for real. They're not really giving
Absolutely,
nothing, you know.
absolutely.
And
And does
mhm.
that's why I said it's okay then to unleash like your very
Right.
primitive self because you
Right.
gotta know your opponents, and then
Hmm.
you also need to be okay with what your future reaction may be because
Hmm.
what I'm learned in this kind of experience is that it these people who are in this cycle, this loop with us, where these are the ways that
Hmm.
they're going to interact with you, because it's not
Hmm.
just in the harm doesn't just happen because you don't often know you're in
Hmm.
a challenge. It's that these patterns of behaviors have worked for these people. And
Hmm.
so they're going to consistently use them because they do work. But at the end result, the net end result is it's manipulative.
Yeah.
It's a manipulative exchange. It's
Hmm.
it's to get their own way. It actually helps to soften their own ego reactions,
Hmm.
and it's narcissistic, and it
Hmm.
becomes all about them. You are just like in that relationship that just that I was just a person that was in the way. I
Hmm.
wasn't labeled importantly in this scenario at
Hmm.
that time.
Hmm.
And I think that's what's the most troubling is that there are a lot of relationships where people are not labeling you with the level of importance that you deserve. And
Hmm.
you may need to then realize that as you're interacting with people. Like these people don't, and if we all get choice, and I always tell this to people, we all get choice in the relationships we have,
Hmm.
to include the ones we don't choose, like parents, siblings, and
That's
all
true.
that.
You're
Like
right
we get
about that.
choice in it. So, so since
Yeah.
I know that that person does not label me with a
Mhm.
level of importance, then I now get to choose how I'm going to be interacting with that person. That doesn't mean you cut them off. Like I
Mhm.
don't.
You
There's a
could
whole
though.
lot of
You could
you could
choose to do that.
if you
Yeah.
choose. You're right. I'm not. But there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of internet stuff about that. Like you just need to let them go. Let me say something. There's a lot of lessons you can learn from dummies. Okay. That's why they use Tesla. So you need to be able, and why I say that, because those same interactions that I'm having with close people who are labeled to be close, when I see
Mhm.
those behaviors in people that are not labeled to be close, I'm already inoculated against it. I already
Mhm.
know what to do. I already know how to respond. And
Mhm.
so these practice exercises, they're wonderful, right? They
Right.
are opportunities for us to grow. So putting people, an unsafe person is an unsafe person psychologically. So you don't need unsafe people around you. Don't get me wrong. But
Mhm.
not every relationship warrants throwing them into the
Just
do not
discarding
disturb.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But I mean, that thing is something that you have to evaluate, right? You got to measure it out and put it on the
Hmm.
scale and see, see balance, right? And I
Right.
think honestly, to me, inside of every relationship you have, if it's not healthy, you got to really evaluate what you're going to do to either uh, make it well or to cut it off, right?
Hmm.
Because anything
Hmm.
that's not healthy, if you keep letting it linger long enough, it's going to definitely get uh, infected. And then
Hmm.
once that
Right.
point gets, it's just like they say, like one bad apple spoils the whole
Spoils
bunch
a
type of
bunch.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true, but that decision doesn't happen lightly, depending upon the significance of the person in your life. You know what
Right.
I mean? And
Right.
sometimes, like when you're thinking through the impacts of what that decision will make on not only you but everything around you, and
Right.
other people around you, maybe you'll allow that thing to linger a little more and all this stuff. But the one thing a person got to really keep in mind is that we don't have indefinite time in
Yeah.
this plane of life, right? So we
Right.
don't really have time to be wasting time on situations that's not going to be, beneficial in the long term for us. And I
Right.
think those folks who are unwilling, to participate in like healthy interactions with someone, Like say just something simple, like you said, just a serious, sincere apology. And it's to me, like I say, the best apologies are those things that are shown in action. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah. So one part is because I think the verbal apology is really the acknowledgement of it. You know?
Right.
Yeah. But the actual actions is demonstration of
Of it. Right.
that
Which
that
is important.
apology applied, right? Which is and that also shows somebody how much they care you care about them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So like the
Absolutely.
biggest way that a person uh can demonstrate this love. I mean, even if these folks who are religious, they be saying that in the Bible it says that God so loved the world that he gave his only son, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Right.
basically he gave a sacrifice, something really beloved, right?
Right.
So my thing is like when the best way to demonstrate love to someone is the willingness to give up something that's important to you. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah,
Right.
to say like I'm willing to compromise this
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, that's how important you are to me. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that there's no bigger expression of that. But to me, nowadays, what it is like people ain't trying to give nothing,
Right.
not an inch. They
Right.
want everything, and they
Right.
want you to conform
Yeah.
to them. They want you to give into them, which to
Right.
me again is like one sided. The scales are totally unbalanced.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But when your heart is oriented on the situation of like, look, we want to have these high frequency, loving, warm relationships all the way around. We really don't want to have none of these these problems. So
Right.
when you and even inside of a loving warm relationship, issues do come up. You might get frustrated, things happen, whatever. But the thing is that the underlying bond, the care and true desire for each other's best interest still is there, you know
Right.
and you
Right.
can see it. Like it's just like simple as this, like we shout out to Kiko and Bunny and Weston. I was
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know, for people who are really close with you,
Mm-hmm.
you will never get into a situation where you get into a conflict that leads to violence between y'all.
Right.
Because, like you said, you can never take back that experience of them seeing you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
intent on giving them harm in any kind of a way. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? So like lay hands on them and they like, man, you really tried to hurt me when you did that.
Right.
Now that burns it to my brain that you tried that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But for people that got love for you, they'll never cross that boundary. And
Right.
that extreme thing they'll pass on. I mean, I even remember, you know, a story between father and son where father might want to lay hands on son, but he's so frustrated he decide not to.
Right.
So he
Right.
he expressed that another way, but the son could see that and say, "I know you wanted to put hands on me,
Right.
but you showed me how much you love me by not doing it."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So I
I
said,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I think that in parent-child relationship, that's a really easy thing because kids can make
yeah,
they can make you want to put their hands on 'em. But we
and
know
do stuff like throw them out the door, do
right.
whatever. But truth be told, like even in these situations, it's like, um, like nobody really. No, when you love somebody, you don't really want to be getting there. You don't want to
No.
be going there. And that's
Mm-mm.
why I say you don't give a person like an out. You know what I mean? Like say, let's just say, for instance, you come into somebody with a demand, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna close you into these four walls. It ain't no way you can get up out of here because it's the only one thing is the yes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Right.
then leave a little window open, where you
Right.
could be like, yeah, you
Right.
could say no for this, and it's still gonna be cool. You could climb out that window or whatnot.
Right.
But
Right.
people don't even want to give you no kind of escape. They want to just box you into where, well, this is the only option then. You know what
Well,
I mean?
here's the practice though, because I think
Mhm,
it's all psychological. We're actually living in a psychological experiment now with what's happening in the world, with this kind
mhm,
of interesting leadership and tariffs and sphere. But if you operate this is why being a principled person matters, right?
mhm,
So I
mhm,
say this to say, like, everybody has a pressure point, right? Mine would
mhm,
be my children. Like,
mhm.
you do something to my children, um, I would really that would be the thing that I would cave for. You
I
know what I
hear you
mean?
on that. Yeah, yeah.
As I really love them.
Mhm,
But other than that, I'm fine with losing my job. I'm fine with you not talking to me. I
Mhm.
might even be fine with like losing my own life because death is a certain part of our experience, right?
I agree. I totally
Um,
agree. I
so
totally
we're
agree.
not hiding from that moment. It's just like it might come faster than I would desire, right? But but I do have operate in with a set of principles that are important to me. So like one of the things is I don't have to be perfect in the dynamic. That's my principle set, and I don't expect anybody that's in my life to be perfect. But I do expect when there is a rift, a fracture, that you and I have the obligation to go back and do the work. And I've seen this in action. I had a really, really good college roommate who, we've had some issues and there was a conflict. I drove all the way to New York to be with her so we could resolve it individually without
Right.
anyone else's eyes. So it was
Right, right,
our
right.
time to kind of work it out. And I have appreciated that relationship to this day because it was one but that both of us felt was worth fighting for. Both she made space for me, I made space for her. I drove all the way to New York to sit with her. We came up with resolution. And then we were able to rebuild our friendship. And never, one of the beautiful things about it, never have I heard about that story, like that one time that we,
It it
it's
it got
never brought up again.
it's got completely reconciled and resolved, you know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah, I
Right.
mean, it's true because like I say, we all have these experience sometimes where you have a good experience like that, right? Because we're human, so we got to give each other grace in terms of being inside of our own humanity. And as
Right.
much as we have that, that's how we connect with each other. But I've
Right.
experienced that too. I would say like with my daughter's grandfather or whatnot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of conflict on the early on days, and I think there was a lot of bad judgment and errors made on those people part.
Mhm.
But when on his own, he reached out to me after we had a very heated, contentious engagement
Right.
previously. But after that, the dude on his own reached out to me and he says, would you come meet up with me for lunch and talk? And I did go there. And when I went there, he did all of the talking, like you said. So in word, he acknowledged his fault and the harm caused in it, and, his plan of action to remediate it and all. And then right after that, he was like, you come with me to my house right now, and I'm gonna,
And that was the act.
implement the things, and he put it into action. And I would say, no matter how I may feel about, anybody now, I could still go back to points in time in life that they did something and
Mhm.
I appreciate it. Like I
Mhm.
would say, even with our own mother,
Mhm.
whatever feelings that I might have that may be authentic and genuine
Mhm.
and whatever imagination of these feelings that she might have about it in
Right.
terms of our interaction. You know,
Right.
we, I I talked to her one time and I told her this, right? And it's funny, I'm gonna tell you this is the words I said, and I'm gonna tell you what she told me after I said it, right?
Okay, go
So
ahead.
so the words I said to her was, and it's on the principle, the spirit of this, which is I appreciate you for while I was in your stomach, right? That
Okay.
you didn't smoke, you didn't do unhealthy things. You know what I mean? So you
Right.
basically brought me to this world healthy and
Okay.
safely. And I
Right.
said, if you did nothing else for me, I would be eternally grateful for you for that part.
Okay.
Because she could have been a crackhead,
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
could have
Mhm.
been doing, she could have been bungee jump, doing all kinds of stuff. I could have came out with two arms not on and all this stuff. So I'm glad that whatever she did while she was carrying me, it was healthy enough to bring me to this world healthy and safe. And
Okay.
beyond that, even if she did nothing else, then I'm responsible for my life from there on out. I figure. So
Okay.
I'm giving her the grace in this. Now, now I'm feeling like that's great appreciation. You know what I'm saying? Later on, I hear she say, "He said I was nothing but a warm womb." Now, I never said those words. Those were
Right,
my but that was her impression of the thing that I'm trying to say, which I'm basically trying to say, you don't owe me anything, you know?
right,
Yeah,
right,
but and as much as what you have done for me, I can appreciate it. And
right,
I'm saying the same thing about this other dude. Like we may not have no bond now, but I can acknowledge that
right,
back in that past moment
right.
that was a sincere, true apology.
That was an
And
apology.
and that was an experience that I appreciate that I had with him. That he was able to give me together so that I could learn these lessons. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Well,
Yes, I'm with
I
you on
think
it.
we both have
Mhm,
similar experience. We vibing on the same wavelength. So I think we've taught everybody today some good, valuable, ways to kind of operate in uh, this very difficult human experience. And one other point I want to make is I know apologizing isn't taught or trained, and
mhm,
so but there is a art to it, and there is both I love this where you say there's a linguistic part and there's a behavioral action part, and I think that people need to think about that, because then
mhm.
that gets you early on into the action of repair. And I'm noting that our time together is good because I'm referencing our conversation we had earlier this week about how you and I both have been very deliberate about when we are interacting with people professionally, making sure we're living out the principles and ideals that you and I talk about. So I wanted to give you a shout out for being patient with that brother. That your interview was
Oh
very
yeah, yeah,
respectful,
yeah.
and it highlights how Black business owners, we go through a lot, especially from our people. So I really want to just shout you out for a minute for taking the time to put your ego on the back burner, and also sharing with that individual what they could do to do it better and different. But one thing you didn't say that I'm gonna say for you is, now he wouldn't have done that to no white folks.
I mean, so it's interesting. Hey, we always think that because, like you said, we always infuse with race being the underlying reason, right?
Right,
But
right,
maybe sometimes people just bad seed, right?
right,
No matter what it is they might have conducted themselves like that, but it's still unacceptable. But
right.
one thing I was gonna highlight about you is that, and I know that we don't really talk too much about our profession and our background and what we're doing and all that stuff, but you are by profession, right? And academically earned, you know, a psychologist, right? With multiple certifications and specializations, right? So these topics that we're talking about, like you said, the anatomy of an apology, professionally you qualified to break this stuff down. Now I know that it's just like a person who's a warrior, right? I was just watching this thing with my brother, and it was a Mr. T and Hulk Hogan back in the day, right? And
Huh,
Hulk Hogan was on a talk show, and the dude says to him, "Show me a wrestling hoe." You know what I mean? And
huh,
not show me a wrestling hoe, but show me a move. And Hulk Hogan and Mr. T didn't want to do that, but the
right,
dude kind of pressed him to do it. So Hulk Hogan put him in a front chin lock and put the dude to sleep. And he fell on the floor and bust his head all open and stuff like that. Sued the man, got 400K off of it, right? But I'm
wow,
saying all that to say that people knowing that you a psychologist, even like family members and all that stuff, they try to come and you know, get you to get you to do what psychologists do. Give me some clinical evaluation and assessment, do this stuff and help me with my mental health and problems. But what people don't realize is that this ain't something that you're supposed to be wielding all the time. You know what I
hmm,
mean? Like
right,
right now, if I'm a boxer, man, I ain't trying to be. If I'm out here eating dinner with my family or whatever, I ain't trying to be showing you go boxing techniques and stuff like that. There's a time when I'm turning that off and I'm
hmm,
putting on another. I'm putting on another hat and I'm putting on another role. You know what I mean?
right,
Like, one of the martial art um, disciplined people in our life, they were saying somebody had asked them. They said, "Hey, when you make it in life, you know what I'm saying? When you get to whatever the top seat in life, or where you at, you famous and all that stuff." You ain't gonna need no bodyguards or nothing like that, right? Because you skilled in the martial arts, right? You
right,
know what that do? You know what he said?
yeah,
He said, he said, when I make it in life, and I'm about to get into a conflict. You say, you know what my number one go to is gonna be? Security. You know what I mean? He's like, I ain't getting my hands dirty no more. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right. I
Yeah,
feel
yeah. I
I
feel him on
appreciate
that.
that, brother. I
Yeah.
appreciate recognizing that because I think
Mhm.
especially um I don't come into this space to be a psychologist. I come into this space to actually be Sarita. And I
That's
think
right.
that people need to understand that psychologists are people, and my training does not extend to like when it's this is funny because I have a classic way of introducing myself. So people,
Mhm.
I don't go in and be like I'm Dr. James, blah blah blah, because whether you like it or not, that's who I am. So like I
Mhm.
don't have no
Right, right.
I don't got no like I don't my girlfriend just got her PhD and I'm really proud of her. So everywhere we go, it's like, doctor da 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 doctor da da da.
Right, 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 right.
And I remember that too. I remember that when I got mine, but I didn't have mine a long time. So
Mhm.
um, but it doesn't diminish me because I don't do that. But I know
Mhm.
in my family, and
Mhm.
especially sometimes with loved ones, because
Mhm.
my profession is psychologist, I'm expected to have no primitive
No
right.
behavioral flaws or mental issues
Or,
of your own. You know
or
what I
exactly. I'm
mean?
not supposed to ever get sad. I'm
Right.
always supposed to be put together and all of this other stuff. And let me reassure everybody. I was Sarita long before I was a psychologist, right? Sarita been here a long, long time. Even before I had language, I had thoughts and and
Right.
there's a little Sarita that lives up in here still. I got to
But
be choking back.
so the thing I feel about professions is that, we do our profession, but we are not our profession. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So I would say no matter what it is that you do for a living, you know, and maybe this is contradictory to something I said before, right? Where I was saying that not one thing completely defines you. But
Right.
I'm saying in this, yes, the profession that you do for a living does define an aspect of you for the time that you fulfilling that role. You know what I mean? But it's
Right.
not completely everything about you. So what
Right.
I always would say is, you do your job, but you're not your job. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
that means that there's some times that job is set down and you're putting
Mhm.
on a whole nother role. So
Correct.
I would think that is also applies in other ways.
Mhm.
Let's just
Mhm.
say people who are doing things that are, off off the letter of the law, right? You
Right.
know what I mean? So
Right.
most people will try to, because they're criminalized in a certain type of way, make that be uh a reason that they can be victimized. Like
Right.
say, but when the police will look at that and be like, well, that dude was a felon.
Right.
So we pulled him over, we shot him because he
Right.
was a felon. But that's messed up because him being a felon is also uh him basically adhering to and complying with societal laws.
Mhm.
He got caught for something.
Mhm.
He stood up, was accountable, and faced judgment for it.
Mhm.
He paid he served the sentence or whatever the outcome of it was, and
Mhm.
he's moved on with his life. But now he got an F on his report card, right?
Right.
But
Right.
that F being on his report card doesn't make it right for somebody to victimize him.
And he's
But
also
see,
a brother. He's
yeah,
also somebody's father. He could also
hmm
be somebody's friend. So what I
hmm
hear you is like that doesn't devalue you. And in this
exactly,
era where people are celebrating the felon has reached the highest office of our land.
right, right,
So that
right.
should now be a sexy term. Every rapper better put it in songs. And, like I'm waiting.
Right.
Felon ain't no bad word in America right now,
hmm
especially how we are celebrating it. So I appreciate you so much, brother. Before we
Likewise.
close out, I know your time is getting close, and mine is too.
hmm
We always try to end in by celebrating a black business or somebody that we've or a business that has helped uplift us. And I'm not going to celebrate one business today. I'm going to celebrate a principle and ideal today. So,
hmm
so in this culture of jobs being completely
hmm
eviscerated and pulled up underneath ourselves, I'm really celebrating all the Black Women's Network that are coming together that I'm a part of. One of them is the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. The other one is the Chesapeake Bay Pearls organization that I'm a part of. That has really come together to uplift all Black women uh, who are in experiencing these moments, and Black families that are experiencing these moments, and creating a sense of community. And because that's really important when you're experiencing the type of loss of identity, financial livelihood, and security that people are experiencing. And there's so much power in community. So I want to celebrate and uplift those groups in particular, and then all other groups who are doing that. One woman in particular who I cannot name, but I reached out to her. I'm highlighting her, even though I can't name her, uh, because what happened in our contact and outreach was beautiful. I
Mm.
told her what happened to one of the contracts I was involved in, and asked her. I had an ask, and that's one thing I'm learning in this transitional period is, boy, you better know what your asks are and be
Right.
asking, and asking a lot.
Very
Um,
clearly.
and be clearly and regularly and consistently. And so what I loved about that person was, in that moment, the ask could not be satisfied, but there was a promise to kind of keep wrapping around and do everything within that individual's power to make sure that there was consistent feedback and follow up. And as opportunities came open, that I would be the first to come to mind. So I'm just deeply appreciative of all the Black women who are in my life, who are supporting me at a time that's been very, very difficult for us as an organization, me as an individual, and all the family. I don't sit here and just soak that in for me. It's everybody, but it's personally touched me. So
Mm.
I'm just deeply appreciative for the community, and the sense of friendship and bonding that has happened, and that people want to help. I think that surprised me a little bit because I was
Mm.
kind of keeping it all quiet, like that we had grants and stuff that were pulled and things like that. Um, but I'm surprised. I'm just so I think in somewhat awe of how much people are okay with hearing the story, and that they also are like, I can't help you like this, but I'm going to help you like that. So I'm just thankful
Right.
for that, and I hope we continue to create community because we're going to need it.
Hmm.
And I know that once we create community, we get sharper and better. And so I'm already feeling more creative and better. I think I'm over the emotional part now. I'm in the creative part. So
Hmm.
I'm giving that to everybody else, and I'm experiencing with them. But I'm proud of my community.
Yeah, I am too. I'm thankful for the community that's around us, and particularly the people that's uh, tuning in to what we're doing every week. That's watching the videos and that's commenting on it. That's been reaching out and sharing, their feedback and thoughts and insights and all of that stuff. I love the engagement and the community interaction. So I want to just shout out for everybody that's supporting us in this type of a way. And like you
Absolutely.
said before, for us, the process of doing this is its own reward. So it's not like we trying to, even if nothing came of it, we still be doing this same thing. But I do appreciate the fact that other perspectives, opinions, and just energies that participate in this.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
they until next week in the Rose Garden, we'll have more. Stay tuned.
indeed.
All right. I
All right.
appreciate you.
Likewise.
All right. It stopped. Remember, we had to give it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Give it the customary